It's the last Monday of March, and it's going to be, I don't know, something like the 28th. And we're going to get into talking about a book about gospeling. Let's see, yonder, those are updated, even those people who turn things in today. Money is due Thursday. I start finishing out groups this week. You find out who's in your groups the week after spring break, because I still have to keep adding people all the way through the end of this week. If you did not turn in the gospel introduction thing on Friday, it did cost you 3 B points. You can still turn it in. I just went through and graded them yesterday morning, and if they weren't in there, then that's what ended up costing you points.
Okay.
William's son.
Are we gonna have to do like the thing that we do with the outsiders where we connect things to our personal life?
Not on this one. No. It's a little bit faster of a read, so I'm not as worried. There's other things I'm going to have you do instead. Air Clay.
What if we were here outside?
Then you probably watched the video and went back and did response and stuff. Grades in Skyward is updated, including those of you who apparently gone on Friday and don't watch videos.
I watched the video. I did watch the video. Why do you harass everybody?
I didn't harass you.
There was no internet at the place, and I couldn't. Oh man.
To quote,
I did watch the video. Wait, then how did you watch the video?
Then how did you watch the video?
Because I was on my dad's hotspot, but it didn't work there. So
Why can't you do it on your hotspot?
anyway.
Because it was
So for those of you who are figuring out things, hey, at some point do a thing. And then do a thing. And then we did that thing already. And
They haven't done that.
We didn't do it.
we're not doing this with you guys.
the bell.
Oh, the bell rang. All right, so we'll come back to this. We'll pause it for you children and we'll come back to you. And we're back. Apparently no one did it anyway, so what a good use of our time. So then to here, home children, you got a copy of book thing today. Ooh, I can put it like right in line with that one. This is not your book to keep and love and cherish forever and ever. If you look at the bottom of it, it's going to have like a stamp with my name on it, and it probably also has a book number on the bottom of it. And so that's what we're looking for. This book you will be giving back to me once we get done, and we'll move on to other book. If you open it up, it's got pictures in it. It's kind of like a picture book, and it's spaced out. It's a fairly fast read. I think the word count is actually less than Outsiders. And so as we get through it, it should be a fairly speedy thing. We will read chunks of it together, but this one you'll have to be reading more of it on your own. And when we get to the next book, again, at some point on your own. For those of you who hate using your own brain for doing, one, you'll bring this back each day because this is what we're going to be doing each day. For those of you who hate using your brain, if you go to Canvas now, not like now, but now when you go to Canvas, there is a thing that says Gospel Page. Any day that we are reading Gospel, and you can click on Gospel Page, and it's going to have a copy of the e-book, so in case you leave book at school and you need to do work or read. And it also has a copy of the audiobook, where you can just go clicky and listen. Drawback is the audiobook is not split up by chapters, because this book doesn't really have chapter numbers or chapter names, so it's split up by sections, which means it's like split up into 75-page chunks on the audiobook. And the reason that makes it tough is it's hard to find your starting and stopping point. But this was the best I could do. It's hard to find any versions of the audiobook out there, so even this version was at least something. So my recommendation is use your own brain. But for those of you who don't, there is an audiobook to help you. For this, we're going to get into the Gospel according to Larry. They're going to explain to you who Larry is in a moment. Looking at the front cover, it says Janet Tasjian. It's going to be a wee bit confusing because this book is written by 2 people. Janet Tasjian is the author who got it put out into the world, but she is not the person who wrote it. It's going to be written by a 17-year-old kid named Josh. But he was not very well known, and everyone thought he was dead, which is a story that we're going to get into. So she published the book for him, which we're going to get to here in a moment. So it's going to be a little bit confusing, and then it's going to settle down. Gray?
Wait, so it says, so Josh, but like it says according to Larry.
Correct.
So like what?
That's why this is an advanced book, because it's going to require you to do thinking, because it has like names in it.
I think I know it. I think Josh is with
Josh.
So, opening it up, we're going to go to page VII.
I don't like that.
Now, Different than page 7, because there's an actual page 7, and we're starting on the letters V-I-I.
Yeah, Josh is Larry.
Because the book actually starts on page 7, but we have to get to the thing that says a note to the reader, because this is like you guys know what a prologue is? Like
Yeah.
So this is going to explain to you the two author things, so it'll make more sense to you. So it says, a note to the reader. Oh, and they're also going to, I don't know if you guys do yoga, but they're going to talk about yoga here in a moment.
We did it in gym. I've never done it.
Do you guys know what yoga
It's gonna
pose?
make your butt move.
What yoga pose is this?
The tree.
Nice.
Or
So,
namaste.
for those of you who don't know, they're going to be talking about the tree pose in just a moment. A note to the reader. And this is Janet, the author person talking. While I was waiting in line at the local grocery store, a young man approached me and asked me for the time. I told him 4:10. I remember it distinctly and continued emptying my carriage onto the conveyor belt. I think a carriage is like a weird name for a shopping cart, as far as I can figure it out. He hovered around the store's exit and then approached me again as I left. He held a copy of my first novel, True Confessions. Aren't you a writer? I told him I was. I've got a great story for you. Oh yeah? I pushed the shopping cart toward my car. You know who the best person to tell your story is? He shook his head. You. He smiled and then offered me a bundle of typed pages held together with twine. It looked like a thesis, but smelled like the bottom of the earth. Yeah, I didn't take it. Come on, there are lots of great publishing houses out there. I'd start in New York. You can always go the agent route, too. I finished loading the groceries into my car, then gave him my best nice to meet you smile. You don't understand. I'm not even supposed to be here. I closed the trunk and looked at him. Blonde hair, half grown out into its natural brown, serious eyes, slight build, peaceful smile, 17, 18 years old. He looked vaguely familiar. This has to get published. He pressed the papers into my hand. I don't know what else to do. He stood on one leg, the other one bent and tucked against it. It was a yoga position my son and I practiced all the time. Tree pose? He nodded. I'm trying to stay balanced. Aren't we all? He seemed completely unself-conscious. I just came back from Walden Pond. You ever been there? Yeah, many times. He pulled a paperback copy of Walden from his back pocket and started to read. Walden's a book that came out in the 1800s. It was very much like the original hippie book. The idea that love nature, hate material goods, be good to other people, make the world a better place kind of thing. He pulled the paperback Walden from his back pocket and started to read. To be a philosopher is not merely to have subtle thoughts, nor even to found a school, but so to love wisdom as to live according to its dictates, a life of simplicity, independence, magnanimity, and trust. He looked at me, eyes shining. Isn't that the best? What do you say to a kid standing on one leg while quoting Thoreau? I told him I'd read his manuscript. I set it up like a term paper. I typed it on an old manual typewriter in the woods. And then I pulled stuff from the web, added some biblical quotes. He smiled. It'll all make sense, you'll see. He placed his foot firmly on the ground. If you decide not to help me, I'll understand. I asked how I should contact him. Oh, that's impossible. I'll contact you. On the drive home, I skimmed through the pages on my lap. When I sat in my driveway and continued to read, unfazed by the gallon of ice cream melting in my trunk. Now, I had thought he looked familiar, and I raced back to the grocery store to find him, but he'd already gone. By the time he called the next day, I had read his entire manuscript. Well, he asked. His anticipation reminded me so much of my own, waiting to get my first novel published. I told him I had another project I was working on, but thought his version of the story was important and needed to be told. I asked my editor, Christy, if she'd be interested in publishing the manuscript. After reading it, she was. Josh also gave me a disc with photos he'd taken. We placed them throughout the book. The epilogue was my add another perspective. Working on the book, I sometimes found Josh's story inspirational. Other times, it seemed eerie and devoid of meaning. In my research, I had found some people who said Josh suffered from bipolar disorder, or ADHD. One teacher even said he thought Josh had an acute Messiah complex. All I know is the young man I met several times over the course of a month seemed perfectly normal. But don't go by me. I sit in a room and make up stories all day. When my editor mailed me the galleys a few months ago, I talked to Josh for the last time. You realize if we publish this, people are going to know that you're still alive, I said. This whole mess might start up again. His voice sounded calm and rational. It's really important for me, to be honest right now. I want to write about the truth. I tried to reach him later to give him some copies of the book, but he disappeared. Again, this is his story.
Wait, why does...
Janet Testian.
Why are people not supposed to know he's alive?
That's part of the big thing we're going to get to in the book.
Wow, that is
So, two things they mentioned about him, just to make sure you guys are familiar. Do you guys know what bipolar disorder is?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
for those of you who don't, it's the idea that, basically your brain chemicals aren't good at regulating your moods, so when you get happy, you go manic, where it becomes like super excited, and that's all you feel. But then when your teeter-totter goes the other direction, and you get depressed and upset, you go full dark, the world is awful, I won't survive. And so basically it goes one or the other, and there's very little in between. And we'll see that sort of the same thing with Josh throughout the book, is he has these manic things where he's really excited and creates all this stuff and then goes into the world is awful, everybody hates me, I'm not going to make it. And so it's like this giant roller coaster back and forth. The other thing was a Messiah complex. You guys know what a Messiah is. Messiah is someone who is supposed to save people. Usually Jesus is referred to as the Messiah, the guy who shows up to save you. Oftentimes doctors are said to have a Messiah complex because they keep you from dying. And the doctor's like, you'll be dead, but I saved you. I reached into your chest with thumping with your heart. I'm a God! And so Josh, what he does in the story, people accuse him of feeling like a Messiah because he comes in and does this whole, I'm going to change the world, and then he ends up changing the world, and then it's sort of what happens to him after he does his thing. And so that Messiah complex plays a big role into the whole thing also. All right, now, the Gospel according to Larry. In my own words, by Josh Swinson. Yes, dear? Okay. Part 1. This is the disciple which testifieth of these things, and wrote these things, and we know that his testimony is true. St. John 21:24. Page 7. Couple things. 1, there are no chapter numbers, and there are no chapter titles. If you turn to like page 15, I think that's the next chapter. Turn that 1, 2. Yeah. And then it's just like another blank spot at the top. So when I give you like reading checkpoints, it's not by chapter number because I have no idea, even to this day, how many chapters are in it. I just know pages from there. And they're also going to do a lot of footnotes. If you look at the bottom, where they have like a little number in the middle of the writing, and then he like explains the thing at the bottom, it's because he's kind of a weird kid, and he has to explain his references. If you don't know things like Monty Python and Gumby and stuff like that, they're going to have references where he explains it to you. All right, now let's jump in. I haven't enjoyed a rant this much since Thoreau, Beth said. And the footnote says, Henry David Thoreau wrote Walden and Civil Disobedience. He's this guy right there. We had to read them for English last semester. It was very New England. Nature is good. Materialism is bad. Anyway, Beth ate it up with a spoon. Ooh, materialism. For those of you who are on TikTok and you keep yelling, Material Girl! You should know what materialism is. What's materialism?
Somebody, a gold digger.
Good enough for me. Someone who likes stuff. The idea of materialism is the whole idea that the only thing that drives me forward is owning more stuff. The more stuff you own, the better off you are in life. That's materialism. And if you're a material girl, you only care about guys that give you stuff. We need people stirring up the way we think about things. My best friend Beth was trying to talk me into forming a Larry study group with her. His website, www.thegospelaccordingtolarry.com, received hundreds of hits a day, mostly from teens and college students. No one knew Larry's identity, and that conjecture alone was the source of several companion websites. Many kids at school were fans, but Beth was rabid. Josh, I know neither one of us has ever joined a club in our life, but that's precisely why we should. I tried to listen to the details of her story. I really did. but there's something about Beth's mouth that gets in the way of paying attention to its contents. Footnote, she would hate me for saying this with her "don't objectify me" rant. Protest all you want, Beth. It's the truth. She often wore a certain brown lipstick and outlined the edges of her lips with this pencil she carried in her bag. Every time she talked, it was like this pale chocolate snow cone staring up at me, waiting to be eaten. I've been in love with her since 6th grade, but she didn't have a clue.
Friend zone.
All right, I'll help you with the club, but just so the two of us can bag all the meetings and laugh at the other people who show up. She wasn't amused. This isn't a joke. Someone is finally talking about the things I've been saying all along, and I think it's important to help spread the word. Are you in or are you out? Of course I'm in. I can't let you do this on your own. The next thing I know, you'll be running for prom queen or something. She punched me in the arm, her usual form of affection. Hey, why don't you help me at the store this afternoon? We're having a run on shovels. Beth's father's hardware store had been our work/treehouse/summer camp since grammar school. Sorting the nuts and bolts and counting the different light bulbs, shoveling the wood chips into wheelbarrows had never seemed like a job to either of us. The small store prided itself on carrying everything a homeowner could need. But for a loner like me, it was a non-threatening way to be a part of the community without too much social pressure. I told Beth I'd meet her there at 4. For a brief moment, I pretended we were a couple, not snowbound outside Boston, but romping through the Caribbean surf, tan and in love. My fantasy shattered, however, when she waved goodbye and headed across the cafeteria to Todd Terrific, the new jock she was obsessed with. Can someone please explain to me how this preoccupation with dopey athletes happens even to headstrong young women who work in hardware stores and score 1350s on their SATs? Beth, what are you doing to me? Life was cruel and unfair. What did this Larry guy have to say about that? The rest of school went by like the movie Groundhog Day, where Bill Murray wakes up and every day is the same, down to the last boring details. Even when something new did happen, fire drill, substitute teacher, it was still just a giant yawn in the storyline. To keep myself amused during study hall, I invented a new alphabet based on the sense of smell. Footnote, I also wrote a skit for Monty Python in case they ever wanted to reunite, and then I drew sketches for the Gumby art project I was working on. Gotta keep busy, I always say. A couple of things. One, have you guys ever seen Groundhog Day?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you have good parents. Congratulations. If you haven't, I'm sorry that your parents don't love you. Same thing with Monty Python. Are you guys familiar with Monty Python?
I don't know.
If you are, congratulations again. Your parents have loved you. If not, I'm sorry that your parents are going to have to get rid of you. The way it works is it's things that we're going to get into. Monty Python was sort of like the creators of modern comedy. And I'll show you guys some examples tomorrow. This is the Groundhog Day movie. If you ever get a chance, it's absolutely great.
Seen it.
About a guy who wakes up every day over and over again. Then Groundhog drives angry. And then this is Monty Python. This is also Monty Python, and I'll show you guys the name of that.
What's Gumby?
Then this right here is Gumby, the one hanging from my ceiling over there. And that's his little friend, Pokey. So
What does that have?
this is a lot of the reference he's going to make, because again, he was like relevant at the very end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s. That's when Josh was around. So slightly before your time. Blah, blah, blah. At home that night, I booted up my laptop and logged on. I checked my email, then the small portfolio of stocks my mother left me when she died. I made one last online stop to Larry, and I wondered if Beth was doing the same thing at the same time in unrequited cyberdate. The Larry logo filled the screen, a peace sign with a dove, a floppy disk, a planet, and a plug inside each of its 4 sections. I scrolled down through several photographs to comments people had written that day. Poljon posted a new link to Adbusters. Toe Jam ranted about Larry's last sermon, calling it brilliantly flawed. I was in the middle of reading his argument when Peter knocked quickly, then stuck his head in my room. Sorry, another quick pause. So this is going to pop up a lot. This was the main symbol that pops up on his webpage that he created. So questions for you. One, do you know what a dove is supposed to represent?
Love.
Peace. The idea of like peace, love, getting along, unity, and stuff like that. This is going to be
The charger.
so close. Electricity, like technology in general. This,
The
world.
no. And do you guys know what this is?
SIM card.
So
Yes.
no, not a SIM card. Well, you're close to it.
Floppy disk.
A floppy disk. So if you don't know, floppy disks, home children. So at one time, this is like the original SD cards, but this goes back to like the 90s, and this is what you see there. That's that same thing. You guys still see this symbol today. Do you know where you still see it?
SIM card. SIM card.
Save?
There you go. Anytime you're on Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and you do anything and you have to save a file, and the little save button, if you ever wondered what that symbol was, it's that, which is one of these. Now, just so you're aware, this right here, it can hold 1 megabyte, one whole megabyte of information on it. The pictures that you upload to Snapchat are 12 megabytes. So it would take 12 of these to hold one picture that you guys upload nowadays. And back like right here, one of these, this, I was able to keep a photo of almost every single one of my students. My first year of teaching, I would take a picture like I do with you guys at the beginning of the year, and I would take pictures of my students. I fit almost every single student's picture on one of these. So to show you how small the pictures used to be. You guys ever get on YouTube and then like the quality is like 144p and it looks like you're watching it through wax paper? Back in the day, that was as good as it got, was wax paper quality. So like all of my pictures of my students from that first year, they all look fuzzy because that was like the highest quality pictures you could do. And you could not like zoom in and blow it up or anything like that. So these are old ones I still have around. Jack?
The site doesn't still exist, right? There's no way since the person will have been, since we know who the person running the website is, and also it's very, very old.
You'll find out when we get to it.
Okay.
I'm gonna look
That's part of what we're going to get to.
Try an activity that we're doing.
Oh, learning.
Probably
Let's
still up,
see.
but not running.
Then stuck his head in my room. You want some leftover pizza? My stepfather was the ultimate businessman. Even in his terry cloth robe and slippers with the squashed heels, he could command his advertising consulting firm from the brink of failure to unbridled success. He had the whole sales thing down. Firm handshake, warm smile, good listening. It was the real Peter, not some put on like lots of other guys at his company. He looked over my shoulder, checked out the screen. Now I've heard about this Larry. Some guy bashing our culture online. Anonymous coward. Hey, some people think it's one of the big televangelists trying to reach the teen market. Or maybe it's a bored housewife in the suburbs looking for something to do. You guys know what a televangelist is?
Basically a priest or someone on TV trying to tell you biblical stuff.
The teacher, the preachers on TV, they're like, send me money because I need to buy a jet because God says I need a jet. And then you send him a whole bunch of money and your grandma sends him 100. He's like, I have a jet now. Now I need a tank. And he's like preaching this. That's the televangelist when they're online or on the TV trying to get old people to send them money. It was a big time. Peter shook his head. Probably just some hacker trying to make a name for himself. Well, I'll add that to the list of hypotheses. Yeah, you do that. He handed me a slice of pizza on a paper towel. Dinner at Catherine's tomorrow? Is that okay with you? Yeah, sure, that's great. Catherine was my stepfather's girlfriend who'd been putting on the full court press to be the next Mrs. Swenson. I didn't have the nerve to tell Peter I found her as interesting as a bag of rice. So that might get a wee bit confusing. That's his stepfather, and his stepfather has a girlfriend. And you're like, that got kind of. So what happened is, he mentioned like a passing comment. So he grew up with mom and dad when he was young, and then his dad went out to get milk and never came back. And they're going to talk about the deadbeat. And it was just like, he was just like, I'm out. Married this guy Peter, and then shortly after she got married to Peter, her body celebrated by giving her cancer. And then she dies. So then now dad's gone, mom died, so now he lives with stepdad, who's now dating this new girl named Catherine. So the idea is anytime you're like, my family is all screwed up, you can go, and then there's Josh. You're like, well, maybe he has me beat. Peter closed the door and headed downstairs to his office. I browsed the Larry archives and printed out the latest sermon to prepare for Beth tomorrow. This was what originally the whole website was about, was these things called sermons, which were essentially just him complaining online, where him just ranting about something that bothered him, and kids all got into these rants, these things he called sermons, where he was trying to change the world by complaining. Sermon number 93. Slip on your Gap jeans, your Nike t-shirt, your Reeboks, or maybe even your Cons. If you think that makes you cool and ironic in a Kurt Cobain kind of way, grab your Adidas backpack, ride to school on your Razor, drink your Poland Spring, eat your Power Bar, write a paper on your iMac, slip on your Ralph Lauren windbreaker, buy the latest CD from Tower, check the caller ID to see who's on the phone, eat your Doritos, drink your Coke, stare at the TV till you're stupefied. Is there any time of the day when we're not being used and abused by the advertising companies? Can we have an inch of free space? Do you mind? Some ambitious kids rent their headspace, the outside, but not the inside, although the inside space is certainly emptier, to local companies by shaving ads into their hair for all their friends to see. It's just a matter of time before corporations figure out a way to sell you stuff while you're sleeping. Maybe some kind of vitamin that releases visual and sonic enzymes that run like a ticker tape through your dreams. All the latest releases now at Blockbuster. Cheesier nachos at Chili's. By the way, you're snoring. Am I the only one who sees the irony of sitting in literature class reading 1984, having a discussion of Big Brother watching out for us like it's sometime way in the future? Some science fiction nightmare that's never really going to happen? Hello? Our lives couldn't be more dictated by the corporations if they gave our schools AV equipment in exchange for making us watch commercials in class. Yeah, they do that already. Never mind.
Oh.
Good thing Peter hadn't hung around for that one. By 2 a.m., I had 14 pages of notes for the new Larry Club. Footnote, I'd help Beth for as long as possible, providing I could leave the club as soon as it got weird. Too many people at the same time usually sends me heading for the hills. When I added up all the things I'd done for Beth over the years, I figured it was more effort than they put into developing the last space shuttle, and completely and totally worth it.
This guy is creepy.
That is a fun way of looking at it. I look forward to seeing how the opinion goes. Hang on one second, Lily J. One, I found out that you can actually advertise. A lot of times you can get a tattoo, and companies will pay you to get a tattoo and wear their company name. It's just that usually it's for not school-appropriate websites. So we watch the CNN news. Have you guys seen these, like the big TVs?
Yeah.
So the reason schools got those was this company, Channel 1, paid to have those TVs put into every room of a school. In exchange, you had to watch a version of CNN that had commercials in the middle of it. And it would have commercials for like toys or movies that are aimed at kids. And the idea was they could charge a bunch of money because you'd have to watch this commercial that would then connect to it. And that's why we have those in there. And that's what he's talking about, the fact that even at school, you can't escape and you would still have to keep watching commercials nonstop. One thing, those are my books. Be careful with them. Do not bend them so the two back covers touch because it makes the pages fall out. And then kids get all whiny and complaining when their pages fall out. Like, my pages fell out. Because for some reason it makes them not do so well. We'll stop there because the bell's going to ring in just a moment. Tomorrow, we'll find out how creepy he is. Hi, Willie J.